Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today I'm here to share with you my roughly 6-month update on my depth year. So the last video I discussed my depth year, the first 3 months of the year, so January, February, and March. Today we'll be taking a look at the next 3 months. So I have my little notebook here so that we can go through it together, and I will share with you how my year has been progressing. So my depth year journal isn't super detailed. It's just kind of a basic list and real quick sort of sum up of how each of the months went. So this time I'm going to read a couple of just little small excerpts from my journal. I saw Kim from Abundant Life Tarot. I watched her depth year check-in video, and she was reading bits from her journal. I thought that was a lot of fun, so I'm totally going to steal Kim's idea. Thank you, Kim. And read you a couple of little things just so that, because it helps me also refresh my mind, what happened during that month. So because we already kind of discussed the first 3 months of the year in my first video, I'm just going to go ahead and start with April. So it says April 2020. April was a bit of a splurge month. I totally fell off the wagon and purchased a ton of decks. I actually made a video about that too, so I will leave that linked in the description box below in case you missed that one, because that's just me like totally owning up to the decks that I bought and how I totally fell off my, low buy deck year. I come at things with a little bit of a more lighthearted approach, as in these are kind of like goals and goals rather than rules. So when I say I fall off the depth year wagon, I'm not actually like upset with myself when that happens. It's just kind of a like, it is what it is. Shoot, I kind of messed up my goal for that month, but that's okay because I will get back up and I will do it again. So please note that if I say anything like that, I'm not actually being super hard on myself. I'm not beating myself up over my depth year. This is just kind of a fun exercise for me and a little bit of an insightful exercise to see where do my efforts go all year long, and what are the things that I want to explore more, and what are the things that I want to kind of rein back in, and how is that working? So please note that when I say like I fell off the wagon or things like that, I'm not actually being hard on myself. Like on my inside, I'm not feeling bad about myself for falling off the wagon or buying decks when I said I wasn't going to, or things of that nature. I did want to just follow up with my depth here because I think it's important for me to be accountable to not only myself but to you, because I said I was going to, so I want to do that. So I fell off the wagon and I purchased a ton of decks. I also spent a great deal of time reading and exploring some new interest in terms of my practice. So that was fun, right? That's a good thing. So let's talk about my studies and books, because every month I kind of divide my depth year up into, 2 different categories, really: my studies, my reading, and then my purchases. So in the month of April, the 2 books that I really read, and I think some of the books that I was reading in May, if I take a look back, I was continuing to read in April. Wild Mercy. I meant March. I said May, but I meant March. I'm still working through Wild Mercy. I'm just reading it in little bits and pieces. That seems to be working for me. It's a heavy book. It's really, really good, but it is a heavy book, and I'm just taking it a little bits at a time. So April, I was kind of like exploring the whole angel thing. So I read the Guides, Guardians, and Angels and the Archangel Gabriel. I read both of those on my Kindle, so I don't really have a book to show you, but they were okay. The Guides, Guardians, and Angels was definitely a bit more informative than the Archangel Gabriel book was. I felt like the Archangel Gabriel book was just a little bit bland and superficial, to be perfectly honest with you. I did get a bit more out of the Guides, Guardians, and Angels, and I did have there were some things that I highlighted and some keynotes that I did take away from them. So I actually got samples for a bunch of angel books, but I didn't end up buying most of them because they felt really repetitive. So I have a little note here under deck purchases that says, see COVID list in previous. To that, I also added the Muse Tarot, the Angel Tarot, the Efflorescent Tarot, the Archangel Power Tarot, the Whispers of the Ocean Oracle. I'm pretty sure that all of those I showed in my falling off the depth here wagon video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about those here. I do have a full walkthrough of the Efflorescent Tarot on my channel, as well as a mod with me if you want to check that one out. But I'll just link to that other video so we don't take up time looking at decks we've already looked at together. I did also order, or I guess one's a pre-order, but I did also order the Revival Art Tarot. I'm hoping that it shows up eventually. The Revival Art Tarot was one that was on my anti-haul because I said I wasn't going to get it because I have like the Golden Tarot. I went ahead and I got it. It was on sale and I thought, you know, that's one of those decks that is so right up my alley, and it's an indie deck, so it's not guaranteed to be around forever. So I totally justified that purchase. Totally did. But that's okay. I also pre-ordered the mass market edition of the Touchstone Tarot. That was supposed to ship in May, but they have since just changed the status to summer 2020, so I'm not really sure when that one's going to go out. I think it's probably COVID. Everything's just backed up, and it just is what it is, you know. It's okay. So anyway, those were the decks that I purchased in April. So quite a few, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 decks, about 7 decks in April. I do get better. We'll see I get better. I have mostly struggled with trying to create a new norm for my wellness practice. I guess I'm really like stuck in my routine. That's become very apparent to me over this whole pandemic because my daily thing, because I work from home, I do all this from home, everything happens from home, that for me didn't change much. I mean, I didn't get to go out. I didn't really go out much anyway. But anyway, that didn't really change much for me. What changed was having everybody else here all the time. So trying to navigate through that space was a bit challenging. Let's move on. Let's move on to my successes. It says my biggest success was creating some really fun videos and adding a few new layers to my personal practice. I think that was when I did the videos about my personal practice, and those were a lot of fun. I would like to expand on that at some point, but right now I have a lot on my plate right now. So, but it is in the works. Okay, so let's go ahead and move along to May. So in May, I wrote in my reflections, May was my birthday, so I got lots of goodies. I spent a lot of time in spiritual studies, but I struggled with my wellness practice. I think with everyone being home all the time and all of our normal routines disrupted, it's been hard to make time for those things now. So pretty much what I just said. Of course, I was still struggling with that in May. It's now July. I'm still struggling with that. It is getting better, but you know, it is what it is. So studies and books. I didn't read as much as I would have liked, but I did finish the Wonderland series, which was fun. So I don't really write my fiction reads in my depth here, but I did read the Wonderland series, which is actually a young adult series by Colleen Oakes, I think. And I really enjoyed those. They were, of course, young adult fiction, which sometimes I like because it's just less, right? It's like a fun read. It was also the same time as working with my Queen Alice Tarot, so that was really fun because I was reading the original Alice in Wonderland stories, working with that deck, which I'm still doing, and then reading the 3 books in the Wonderland series, the young adult Wonderland series. So that was a lot of fun because I really enjoyed just kind of diving into that. As for the books I studied, I read the Spirit Almanac, and that one was pretty interesting. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't really remember what it was about. I think it was kind of based toward kind of seasonal type studies, which is probably why I purchased it. So maybe I'll have to refresh my memory on that one and get back to you. Okay, so let's talk about decks I purchased. I did not purchase any decks in May. I didn't realize I didn't purchase any decks in May until I went back and looked at my spreadsheet, because yeah, I'm a total nerd. I have a spreadsheet of every deck I buy, how much it cost, where I bought it from, when I bought it. Yeah, I'm a nerd. Anyway, so I didn't buy any decks in May. I did get 3 decks. 2 of them were a birthday gift, and that was the Star Tarot 2nd edition and the Marielle 2nd edition. I got both of those for my birthday. I have done a walkthrough and a mod with me on the Star Tarot, the 2nd edition of the Star Tarot. And I haven't opened the 2nd edition of the Marielle yet. I'm not entirely sure what I'm waiting for. I haven't gotten into it yet. I'm kind of attached to my 1st edition, and to be perfectly honest, I'm a little disappointed with the changes in the cards, because I did a lot of work coming to terms with that Hierophant, and I'm kind of sad that it was changed. I think the High Priestess was changed as well, and I really like the one that was in there originally. But anyway, I wish that, and I know I'm not the only one to say this, but I wish that they had left in the originals and just added the additional cards so that you could pick and choose which ones you like. But they didn't do that. So, and the other deck that I got in May was the Darkwood Tarot, and that was through a trade. And it's still sitting on my shelf to be looked at. I've been so busy. Like, that's gonna be my excuse for everything. I've been so busy. I have so much going on. Okay, I haven't looked at it. I haven't seen much online. I haven't watched any walkthroughs or reviews or anything of it yet. So when I'm ready to work with that, when I find 5 free minutes to work with that, I'm gonna hopefully be able to share some of that with you too. So that was it for my purchases. Like, I did really good in May, but I think that's mostly because it's my birthday and the decks that I got were gifted to me. So maybe that's kind of cheating. Okay, so my struggles in May is just, again, my struggle was my wellness practice. That's just going to be a reoccurring theme. I'm not going to keep harping on it. My successes in May was I did a lot of work with Mother Mary in May, and that was really wonderful. So let's move along on to June. So last month, so I wrote here in my journal, June was a bit of a hectic month. I had a lot of projects, a lot of collaborations going on. My personal practice was a bit on and off, as my focus was mainly on those projects. So in June, I did quite a bit of reading, and I was kind of back into reading some of my more witchy books. I am so thrilled to see witchy books come out that are more a little bit more earth-based, a little bit more grounded, little less Wicca-based, really is what I'm getting at. This was one of the books that I picked up to read, and I read in June. It's The Witch's Herbal Apothecary, Rituals and Recipes for a Year of Earth Magic and Sacred Medicine Making. So this is definitely an herbal book overall, but there is some wonderful seasonal information in this book, and I really like that the book is broken down into the different seasons, because that is definitely the way that my practice is kind of structured. So we have a little bit of, an introduction, we have a little bit into, what is a witch and the elements of magic. And then going into part 2 is really where the majority of their information lies. And we have the beginning with earth magic and the medicine of spring. So it's all about rebirth and awakening. Then we move on to earth magic and the medicine of summer, where we have ripen and thrive. Then we move on to the medicine of fall with harvest and compost, and the medicine of winter with release and rest. And the thing that I really like about this book, besides the fact that it's beautiful, I'm a sucker for a book with artwork in it. It's just fabulous. So here's spring. In addition to talking about the herbal associations, there is a lot of really interesting information that relates seasonally to a practice. And it's just the way that this is really put together is really wonderful. Each season also relates to an archetype. So spring is the expansive maiden. And there's a lot of interesting information here if you are interested in exploring a more seasonal based practice. This is a great book for that. There was a lot of really wonderful information. I took copious notes. So when I have books like this, I don't like to highlight in them or write in them. So I actually just write in a notebook, but I took copious notes from this. We definitely have some information about herbs for each season. We have some sort of We have kind of some rituals and some type of ceremonies that you can do. But also the other thing that I really liked is a lot of it's very practical. So like here we're talking about spring cleaning, really nice practical information, which really works for me. And here we talk about, you know, the idea of rebirth in terms of a practice, which is just wonderful. It talks about each of the archetypes of the seasons. And the information about the directions and what that relates to. And then we have a whole section for recipes, which for me, because I don't do a lot of herb crafting, this wasn't quite as helpful for me. Although there are definitely some things in here that I noted that I want to try. But for me, it was more about the seasonal association and that kind of information. But if you are interested in herb craft at all, there is a lot of wonderful information here. So we have kind of the seasonal information, then we have some rituals and spells, we have some recipes, and then we have kind of like a catalog or a compendium of the herbs that were mentioned. And so you can find out more about them here, which I think is really lovely. And we have journal prompts. I love journal prompts. So that's really wonderful. And then we move through each of the seasons. And then there's just, you know, some resources at the end. So I really enjoyed this book. It's one that I intend to go back to each season to kind of refresh myself. Like I said, I took copious notes on this one too. So this was a really enjoyable one and I highly recommend it. And it's just a beautiful book. And another kind of witchy book that I read in June is Psychic Witch. A metaphysical guide to meditation, magic, and manifestation. So this is kind of, I think this is new. So had this been around when I very first started learning about sort of witchy things, I think this would have been helpful. I think this is a really good primer. And sorry, my book is all bent. It came that way, which is a little bit heartbreaking for me because like it came with a big bend in it. I guess I could have sent it back, but I just didn't want to. Anyway, this is a wonderful book that I think has some really great foundational information in it. And somewhere in this book, somewhere in the introduction, I can't remember where, I might have highlighted it because I did highlight some in this book. The author mentions that even if you're a seasoned or a practiced witch, that it's always helpful to return back to your primers. And for me, that was kind of a good reminder. I'm like coming at the craft sort of, or my personal practice of over 20 years of doing things my own way. And sometimes it's kind of good to go back to the fundamentals. Now, I'm a big believer in doing things your own way, kind of walking your own path. But I think that it's good to have that foundational knowledge and to kind of touch base with it again. And this book is definitely all about sort of making magic from self. So you don't need, like the author mentions in the introduction, you don't need tools. Like you can make magic just in and of yourself. And I thought that was really interesting because most of the books that I read when I was very first starting out were all about like kind of the, you know, the tools and the, you know, you need this and you need that. And if you want to be a real witch, you got to have this and all of that. This book takes all of that out of it. And I think that would have been really helpful for me when I was beginning into my practice to have a book like this that basically says, you need to learn how to sort of make your own magic in and of yourself, right? Without all of the extra tools, because the tools are just there to help us kind of direct and focus our intention or our energy, depending on how you see that. But all of it comes from within you. And this book really focuses in on that. And I think that was really wonderful. So a really wonderful little book. It has lots of different exercises to do, which I think is really helpful if you're really wanting to focus in on kind of unlocking your own sort of psychic abilities. So here's like where he talked about, I'll just read a couple of the pieces I highlighted. Just because something is basic or simple does not mean that it isn't immensely powerful. I thought that was really wonderful. I really like that keyed into my personal practice. That like wraps up my personal practice because my personal practice is very basic. It's very simple, but it is immensely powerful for me. And then I also highlighted, I have found continual unfolding of attunement and depth in the basic practices that many others may set aside as being part of their past practice as beginners. I thought that was really wonderful too. And then here we go into, like, I'm not going to read all of the highlights or we'd be here forever, but just really wonderful, very solid foundational information. So real quick, I want to talk about the 2 rune books that one I read in June and continue to reference, and the other one I started in June and I'm still working my way through, and that is Nordic Runes. This was my first introduction to runes, kind of like this is my primer material. You'll see that like I've highlighted like a ton in here. This book I think was really wonderful. It was really informational, and it told a little bit of the story about the origin of the runes, which I thought was really wonderful. So the other book that I have been reading and am still working my way through is Taking Up the Runes. This is a complete guide to using runes in spells, rituals, divination, and magic. This I think is a wonderful next step. Now, Granite Runes are new to me. This is like a new thing that I'm studying with the group. And I feel like this is a wonderful getting started place. And this is like taking it to that next level. Because this one actually handles the runes in pairs, which is really interesting. It's just a wonderful, it's actually kind of set up like a group, like a study group. And in the introduction, the author talks about using this as a study guide. So these were the 2 rune books that I read or started reading, and I'm continuing to read from June on, and I've really enjoyed them both. I highly recommend both of them. My rune knowledge is really limited. These are the only rune books I have besides the guidebook that comes with Nina's rune deck. And but I really don't feel like I need any more than this. I feel like this has got me covered. If it's anything like tarot, I may end up with 900 books on it, but for right now, I feel like this is all I need. This is a great primer. It's a great place to start, and it's more than enough information to try and digest over, in learning these 24 little runes. I feel like it was easier to learn the 78 cards of the tarot, but this has been a really wonderful experience. So I really enjoyed reading these 2 books. So let's move on to purchases. I only bought 2 decks in June, and that was the Shining Tried Tarot, which is an edition I got off eBay, and it was actually sealed, so that was really nice. And I bought the Magical Mermaids and Dolphins by Doreen Virtue. This one has a little bit of a story, so we'll get to it here in a second. The Shining Tribe Tarot was one that I wanted to get because I kind of cut my teeth on Rachel Pollack's 78 Degrees of Wisdom. That was kind of my essential guide, my essential tarot teacher, if you will, in the beginning. And so I knew that this was a deck that she had created, and I really wanted to get a hold of it because I've heard wonderful things about this book. And I really want to work with the deck as well. This was one that kind of went, it's kind of always been on my list. It is out of print, so I've had like the watch things on eBay to try and find a copy of it. I do like that the primitive style of artwork, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Ellen Lorenzi Prince's artwork. Maybe a little bit less refined, but it feels very primitive, very earthy, just really, really wonderful and very grounded. I haven't worked with this deck yet, but it's definitely on my list to do because I want to read this fantastic book that goes along with it. Again, I really wanted it mostly just because it's a Rachel Pollack deck, and I really wanted to see, I like her take on the tarot, so I wanted to really explore the deck that she created and see what she had to say and her interpretations of these cards, and then of course to work the cards themselves. The other deck I bought is the Magical Mermaids and Dolphins, and this is, I laugh because this is a Doreen Virtue deck, and I'm not a huge fan of Doreen Virtue decks. But this deck, the story behind this deck, I have a little bit of a personal connection to it because the friend that the friend that introduced me to tarot years and years ago, before she ever did a tarot reading for me, she did a reading with these cards. And that was kind of my first introduction to sort of oracle at all, in general, card divination in general. That was my first introduction to it. And so I had this deck. She gifted me a copy of it. And then over the years, because this was like, what, 15 years ago or so, I don't know where it went. Was a little bit sad, but honestly I hadn't really thought about it in years. And then I just happened across it on Amazon one day, and I was just like, I used to have that deck. Like, where did that go? That was the deck that my friend gave me. And I kind of went through my decks and went, yeah, it's just not here anywhere. I have all my other original decks. The first decks I ever bought, still have all of those. I don't know where this one went. So I went ahead and bought another copy of it. It's not, it's not quite the same because it wasn't a gift. Although I definitely, I don't believe that you have to be gifted a deck. It's just, I think that's total BS. But it's really nice when someone gifts you a deck because it comes with it comes with a personal story, a personal attachment. And so I was kind of sad that I couldn't find the version that she actually gifted me, but I went ahead and got it because that way I have it again in my collection. And it's one that I'm not it's totally a sentimental thing, right? That's why I got it. It's a sentimental thing, but I'm happy to have it back in my collection. So that's the Magical Mermaids and Dolphins and the Shining Tribe Tarot. So, 2020, kind of a bummer year overall in the world. A lot of things going on. But for my depth year, besides the kind of falling off the wagon, which I already talked about in another video, it's been pretty good. I've been kind of exploring different things. I've been working on change and adaptation and trying to go with the flow, and that's not super easy for me. I'm kind of a creature of habit. And so when, the whole world kind of shifts, like most people probably, I'm sure, it's hard to shift with it. And, I'm still at this point trying to find my footing again with some of the things that I used to do before. And some of those things I'm just not going to do anymore, or I'm going to do them in a totally different way because that's what makes sense for me in the world that we're living in now. But overall, I've been able to really dive deep into some things. I've really been able to explore some wonderful things. I have really been enjoying my decks these last few months. I did a lot of work last month with the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. That was really fun. And that I did a tarot challenge. And that kind of just, whenever I do a tarot challenge, I don't do them every month because they can be quite time consuming, especially if you tarot journal to the extent that I do, which I love, and I wouldn't do it otherwise if I didn't. But it's a really fun way for me to reconnect with my tarot practice and to kind of take it out of the deep dive into self and shadow and all of that, and to kind of just play with my cards. And sometimes I get a little too into the weeds with my tarot, and sometimes I forget to just enjoy them. So the tarot challenges are always really fun for that. I've been journaling and working with the Queen Alice Tarot still, which I will do a video on because that's been a really fun experience, as well as the Ophidia Rosa. And again, I'll do another video on that one because those two decks, I've created journals for them. I've got a whole study process thing going on. The Queen Alice Tarot I've been doing in relation to the Alice stories. The Ophidia Rosa one, I've been diving deep into poetry with that one. So it's been a really fun experience working with those two decks, and I will do more in-depth videos on those because they are kind of their own little thing. But so as far as diving deep into my tarot, that's been really fun. So I think that's it for me for this quarterly, I guess is really what these are, this quarterly depth year reflection. If you are still here with me, bless you, because I know this has been a long and rambling one. Just wishing everybody much love and many blessings through the rest of 2020. Let's hope that things get better from here. I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.